Where are you stuck? Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." You wake up, not because you're alive, but because you're used to it. You scroll, you obey, you endure. But deep inside, a voice whispers, "This isn't living." You tell yourself you're tired, but you're not tired. You're unfulfilled. You're overfed with comfort and starved of meaning. You were born into a world that taught you how to survive, but never how to transform. There's a name for this state of quiet despair. Nietzsche called it the spiritual paralysis of man, a condition where the soul forgets how to grow, where we confuse safety with peace, where we confuse routine with purpose. You weren't meant to remain what you were made to be. You were meant to shed skin, to suffer, to struggle, and through that, to become. But most never do. Why? Because no one ever told you that the path to your true self begins with pain, that you must first carry weight like a camel, then roar against lies like a lion, and only then be reborn as a child. This is not a motivational video. This is a confrontation. You've been lied to about strength, about obedience, about what it means to live a good life. Nietzsche didn't come to comfort you. He came to tell you the truth. You will either evolve or rot in a life that was never yours. The only question is, where are you stuck? In a world obsessed with progress, few realize how deeply we've stopped evolving. Nietzsche wasn't just reacting to Darwin. He went further, into the soul. Darwin told us how we came from animals. Nietzsche warned us how we could stay that way, if we didn't keep transforming. He believed that most people halt their growth the moment they find comfort. That modern man is not evolving. He is sedating himself. With routine, with distraction, with obedience. But life, Nietzsche said, is not about being. It is about becoming. He saw the soul as a force that must undergo 3 metamorphoses, 3 painful sacred transformations that lead to inner freedom. First, the camel, who learns to bear suffering with silent strength. Then, the lion, who finds the courage to say no to everything false. And finally, the child, who begins again, with innocence and creation. Nietzsche lived these stages himself. He walked away from his university position. He rejected the morals of his time. He chose exile, loneliness, and even madness over obedience, because he believed he who cannot obey himself will be commanded. This video is not just about philosophy. It is about your spirit and what it must go through to become real. Nietzsche did not want followers. He wanted fire starters, rule breakers, reborn creators. The question is not whether you understand these stages. The question is, are you willing to pass through them? Because if you do not transform, then you are not living. You are only surviving. Nietzsche wrote in his book, "He who cannot endure the burden of his own becoming will remain a shadow of what he was meant to be." Before you become powerful, you must first kneel. This is where Nietzsche begins, not with rebellion, but with surrender, not to society, but to difficulty itself. This is the first metamorphosis of the spirit, the camel. Nietzsche wrote in Zarathustra, "There is much that is difficult for the spirit, but the difficult and the most difficult are what its strength demands." Most today flee hardship. We run toward comfort, validation, distraction. But the truth, we are not peaceful. We are paralyzed. Nietzsche saw comfort not as healing, but as spiritual decay. He warned, "The snake which cannot shed its skin must die. To become more, you must carry more." The camel chooses weight, the weight of past wounds, societal expectations, and personal guilt. This is the moment of truth, not when life gets easier, but when you say, "I will carry this." "What is heavy?" thus asks the load-bearing spirit. It kneels down like the camel and wants to be well laden. The camel is not weakness. It's the quiet beginning of strength. Why the camel? Because the camel survives where others fall. It endures harsh deserts in silence. In Nietzsche's metaphor, the desert is life, barren, vast, testing, and the camel walks through it willingly, carrying the sacred weight of transformation. This is where the ego begins to die, where excuses fade, where the soul whispers, "I'm ready to suffer because I want to evolve." This is not punishment, it is preparation. How escape is a lie. We live in avoidance. We sedate ourselves with noise. We hide pain in the unconscious, pretending it will vanish. Nietzsche disagreed. Invisible threads are the strongest ties. What you ignore becomes what owns you. The camel says, "I will no longer escape." This is a turning point, a reckoning with fear, shame, and silence. It's brutal, but it's necessary, because suffering isn't the enemy. Avoidance is. First burn, then rise. Nietzsche wrote, "You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes?" You cannot evolve without first destroying the false self. The self built on obedience, fear, imitation. The camel bends and burns. That is the first death, and without it, there can be no rebirth. What does a modern camel look like? Ask yourself, do I carry truth or escape it? Do I reflect or distract? Do I suffer consciously or just suffer? The camel is not someone who loves pain. It's someone who respects it, learns from it, uses it. Nietzsche wrote in The Gay Science, "Only great pain is the ultimate liberator of the spirit. It forces us philosophers to descend into our depths." The camel turns suffering into fuel, and endurance into power. Sacred yes. This stage teaches the sacred yes, to burden, to growth, to truth. This is not victimhood, it is ownership, not blaming the world, but lifting it. One must have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. In this stage, chaos becomes preparation. The camel is the keeper of the flame. It does not yet roar, it does not yet create, but it carries everything needed to become something more. What comes next? The camel is not the goal, it's the first gate. Nietzsche writes, "In the loneliest desert, the second metamorphosis occurs. Here the spirit becomes a lion. But before the lion roars, the camel must kneel. Before you say no, you must learn to say yes. Not to comfort, not to conformity, but to the pain that forges your soul." So ask yourself honestly, are you in the camel stage? Are you suffering, but avoiding the lesson? Are you escaping truths you were born to carry? Then it's time. Time to stop begging for peace, time to stop fearing discomfort, and time to say what the camel says. Lay your burden on me. I am ready. Because only those who carry the flame can one day become it. The lion, the rebel spirit. Nietzsche writes, "The greatest fight is not against others, but against the voice that says, 'Obey.'" The camel kneels to suffer, but suffering is not the end. There comes a moment when the spirit stands up and says its first sacred word. This is the birth of the lion. Nietzsche's second metamorphosis. Nietzsche writes, "In the loneliest desert, however, the second metamorphosis occurs. Here the spirit becomes a lion who would conquer his freedom and be master in his own desert. The desert remains harsh, but the lion no longer bows. He fights, not for domination, but for inner freedom. The great dragon. Nietzsche gives the lion an adversary, the great dragon. Its shining scales read, "Thou shalt." Each scale is a command, an inherited moral, a sacred rule imposed on you. The dragon is tradition, religion, culture, all telling you how to live. Here he seeks out his last master. He wants to fight him and his last god for ultimate victory. Zarathustra. The lion is the spirit that dares to challenge these inherited truths. It is the will to refuse. The spirit of refusal. The lion is not wild rage. It is calm, fearless defiance. It says, "These are not my values. This is not my truth. This life is not mine to obey. It is mine to shape." Nietzsche writes, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." And that is the nature of things. The lion refuses to be commanded. He begins to obey only himself. The inner battle. This rebellion doesn't start in public. It begins in silence. When you disagree with a belief you were told never to question. When you stop pretending to agree just to belong. When you face the guilt of breaking the pattern. The lion feels that guilt and walks through it, because that guilt is the echo of control, and the lion is done being controlled. The power of no. In psychology, there's a term, assertive training, learning to say no. Most people can't. They'd rather obey than risk discomfort. But Nietzsche said, freedom is the will to be responsible for oneself. To say no is not rebellion. It's the beginning of self-respect. If you can't say no, you are not free. Shedding the mask. Nietzsche said, "Every deep thinker is more afraid of being understood than of being misunderstood." Why? Because to be understood is to be seen, and to be seen is to become a threat. The lion removes the mask. He becomes visible, not for applause, but for truth. He becomes dangerous to lies. The lion isn't the end. Nietzsche was clear. The lion clears the ground, but cannot build. But to create new values, even the lion is not capable of that. Zarathustra. He destroys what no longer serves him, but the soul must go further. The lion must become a child, the creator of new values. Are you becoming the lion? Ask yourself. Have you said no to roles that no longer fit? Have you felt guilt for being true to yourself? Have you questioned the values that shaped you? Then the lion is rising within you. And yes, it will cost you comfort. You will be misunderstood. You will be called difficult. Good. That means you're no longer tame. When you're called dangerous, when someone stops obeying, they stop fitting. Society labels them rebellious, toxic, unstable. But Nietzsche knew the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. To say no is to lose the herd and find yourself. You'll be told, you've changed. You're not like before. You make things complicated. The lion answers simply, I was never meant to be like you. You have carried the weight like the camel. Now you've begun to drop what was never yours. And in doing so, you are reclaiming the right to exist freely. But this is still not the end. Because rebellion alone cannot fulfill the soul. The lion is powerful, but he cannot create. He clears the battlefield, but the world still waits for something new. And for that, you must become the final metamorphosis. Not the beast, not the burdened, but the child. The child, the creator spirit. To become new, you must first forget what they told you to be. The camel endures, the lion rebels. But the journey isn't complete until the spirit learns how to begin again. This is the final metamorphosis, the most powerful and misunderstood of all. The third stage, the child. Nietzsche writes, the child is innocence and forgetting, a new beginning, a game, a self-rolling wheel, a first movement, a sacred yes. Thus spoke Zarathustra. The child doesn't obey, the child doesn't fight, the child creates, not in imitation, but from pure inner truth. Why the child? Because only the child is free enough to say yes. The camel says yes to burden. The lion says no to oppression. But the child says yes to life itself. Not the life given by others. Not the one built by society, religion, or rebellion. But a new life, defined from within. The child is innocence, not ignorance. It forgets, not from weakness, but to clear space for creation. The child is not bound by guilt, shame, or expectation. It plays, it questions, it imagines what never existed before. From destruction to creation. Most people never become the child. They suffer like the camel. They rage like the lion. But they never move past rebellion. They know what they hate, but not what they love. They tear down beliefs, but never replace them. They reject the system, but don't build a better one. Nietzsche warned us, destruction is not enough. To complete the journey of becoming, you must create. For the game of creation, my brothers, a sacred yes is needed. Zarathustra. That sacred yes is the spirit of the child. Childlike doesn't mean weak. The child is not soft. It is powerful in a way no adult can understand. It is not afraid to look foolish. It is not ashamed to begin again. It is not bound by should or must or what will they think. The child doesn't carry the weight of societal pressure. It carries only one thing, possibility. Nietzsche writes, "For the child, creation is part of its nature." When a child stacks a tower of blocks and knocks it down, it's not out of malice. It's out of joy, the joy of starting again. That's what we forget. That's what adulthood buries. That's what conformity kills. The true self is born here. Nietzsche didn't believe your identity was given at birth. He believed you were born with potential, but your true self is something you must create, not by obeying, not by destroying, but by choosing. Nietzsche writes, "No artist tolerates reality." The child is the artist of identity. It invents values. It writes new stories. It lives by inner vision, not outer rules. The child is the return to you, before guilt, before fear, before conditioning. What do you want to build? Now that you've burned your old identity, what comes next? That's the terrifying freedom of this stage. There are no commandments, no path, no God above you. Only the question, who am I, when no one is telling me who to be? The child doesn't answer with words. It answers by living, by playing, by experimenting, by failing and rebuilding without shame. This is what true freedom feels like. Not knowing the outcome, but moving anyway. Child in a world of lions. Most people won't understand this stage. They'll think you're lost, irresponsible, chaotic. But that's because they're still trapped in the lion's war, or worse, in the camel's sleep. They'll say, "You've changed. You're not serious. You need to grow up." But Nietzsche flips that idea on its head. True growth, he says, is becoming the child again, consciously, not returning to immaturity, but returning to innocence after you've faced the fire. This is not regression. This is rebirth. The world you create. When the child awakens, everything changes. You no longer seek approval. You seek alignment. You don't follow purpose, you invent it. You stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What do I want to create?" This is the energy of a real life. Not just survival, not just resistance, but vision. The child gives you back your imagination, and imagination is power. You are the flame. Now, In the camel stage, you carried the flame of suffering. In the lion stage, you used it to burn the lies. But now, the flame is inside you. You don't fight anymore. You don't carry anyone else's burden. You simply become who you were always meant to be, before the world told you who you had to be. This is not philosophy. It's transformation. Nietzsche didn't write for the masses. He wrote for you, the one willing to break, burn, and be reborn. Nietzsche writes, "Become who you are." So ask yourself, have you merely suffered? Have you only rebelled? Or have you truly begun again? The child is your return to freedom, to imagination, to your own rhythm, to your own law. It's the point where no one commands you, and you no longer need to be commanded. You become a self-rolling wheel. Your life becomes a sacred yes. And if you've made it here, past the wait, past the fight, past the fear, then you are not just alive. You are becoming. You have now seen the journey. The camel, who dares to suffer. The lion, who dares to say no. And the child, who dares to begin again. Most people will never even know these stages exist. Some will hear of them and ignore. But a few, a rare few, will feel something awaken inside. A quiet, trembling voice that whispers, "This is me." If you are still here, listening, breathing, reflecting, then you are one of them. You are not finished, you are not lost. You are becoming, and that becoming will cost you the old version of yourself, the version built by obedience, fear, and silence. But what you gain is authentic freedom. Nietzsche did not write to comfort the herd. He wrote to ignite fire in the few, not to entertain, but to awaken, not to lead, but to remind you. You must lead yourself. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs people who are ready to suffer with purpose, to rebel with clarity, and to create without apology. Take this with you. Your suffering is not shame. Your questions are not mistakes. And your desire to build something new is not madness. It is proof that your soul is alive. Most people die before they are born. But not you. Maybe this is not the end. Maybe it's your beginning. Our final words to viewers. If this journey moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Someone you know, a friend, a sibling, even a stranger, might be quietly drowning, waiting for a spark. Share this video with them. Let it reach who it needs to. And if this awakens something in you, subscribe to this channel, Friedrich Nietzsche. This isn't just content. It's the evolution of your spirit. We'll see you in the next transformation.